Rusty had always been a well-behaved golden retriever, content to lounge in the sun and chase the occasional squirrel. But on that rainy Tuesday morning, something changed in the normally gentle dog, his behavior becoming frantic, almost possessed. As he began digging furiously in the far corner of the Anderson family's backyard, no amount of calling or commanding could stop him, his paws becoming bloody as he tore at the earth with a determination that frightened the family who had rescued him from the shelter. Just 3 months earlier, Emma Anderson watched from the kitchen window, concern growing, as her husband tried unsuccessfully to pull Rusty away from his mission, the dog growling in a way they'd never heard before. Then, just as they were considering calling animal control, they heard it, a sound so faint they almost missed it, a tiny cry coming from deep within the freshly dug hole. Before we continue this incredible story of canine heroism and the mysterious discovery that would change the Andersons' lives forever, please subscribe to our channel now for more amazing true stories that prove animals sometimes understand things humans cannot. The Anderson family hadn't planned on adopting a dog that rainy Saturday in March. They'd only gone to the local animal shelter because Lily, their 7-year-old daughter, had been begging for a kitten for months. But the moment they walked through those doors, everything changed, though not in the way any of them expected. It was Tyler, their 10-year-old son, who first noticed Rusty, the golden retriever mix, huddled in the back corner of his kennel, while Lily darted straight for the cat section. Tyler stood transfixed by the dog's eyes, deep pools of amber that seemed to hold a universe of sadness. "What's his story?" Tyler asked the shelter volunteer, a woman named Grace, who had been showing them around. Grace's expression softened. "He's had it rough," she explained. "Came in about 2 months ago, found wandering along the highway, half-starved, his coat all matted. The police brought him in after someone reported a dog that looked like he'd been abandoned." Emma Anderson joined her son, peering through the chain link at the golden retriever, who made no move to approach them. Unlike the other dogs bouncing excitedly in their kennels, Rusty simply watched them, his gaze wary, yet somehow dignified despite his circumstance. "How old is he?" Emma asked. "About 3, we think," Grace replied. "He's healthy now, but still underweight. We suspect he was left behind when his owners moved." The police found empty moving boxes in the house near where he was wandering. John Anderson put his hand on Tyler's shoulder, steering him toward the cat section, where Lily was already falling in love with every kitten she saw. "We're really here for a cat, son. Remember your sister's birthday wish?" But Tyler couldn't forget those eyes throughout their tour of the shelter. He kept glancing back toward Rusty's kennel, and by the time they were filling out adoption papers for a gray tabby kitten, Tyler had grown unusually quiet. "Can we see the golden retriever again?" Tyler asked suddenly, his voice small but determined. John and Emma exchanged looks, recognizing the serious expression on their normally easygoing son's face. A look they'd learned meant he wouldn't easily let something go, just to say goodbye. Tyler added, sensing their hesitation. Grace led them back to Rusty's kennel, opening the door so they could step inside. The dog remained in his corner, making no move toward them. "He's not usually good with children," Grace explained. "That's why he hasn't been adopted yet. Most families want a more outgoing dog." Tyler sat down on the concrete floor, a respectful distance from Rusty. "I don't mind if he's shy," the boy said softly. "He just looks like he needs someone to be patient with him." To everyone's surprise, Rusty slowly lifted his head, studying Tyler with those penetrating amber eyes. Then, in a movement so gradual it seemed almost reluctant, he rose and took a single step toward the boy, pausing as if gathering courage before taking another, then another, until he stood directly in front of Tyler. "Don't make any sudden movements," Grace whispered. As the family held their breath, Tyler extended his hand, palm up, and waited. Rusty sniffed it cautiously, then did something Grace said he hadn't done with any previous visitors. He lowered his head, allowing Tyler to gently touch is fury. Think he chose you?" Grace said, wonder in her voice. "What about the kitten?" Lily protested, her lower lip trembling. It was Emma who made the decision that would change their lives that day. Sometimes the pet finds the family, not the other. "Way around," she said, her intuition telling her this connection between boy and dog mattered. Maybe we need both. The first weeks with Rusty had been challenging. His previous abandonment had left emotional scars that manifested in anxious behaviors. He startled at loud noises, flinched when anyone raised their hands even to wave, and would sometimes hide in the laundry room during thunderstorms. The night terrors were the worst. Emma would find him whimpering in his sleep legs, twitching as though running from some unseen threat. John had built him a comfortable bed in the corner of the living room, but Rusty often ended up sleeping outside Tyler's bedroom door, as if standing guard he's protecting his boy. The vet had explained when Emma mentioned it forming an attachment bond. Rusty sees Tyler as his person, the one who saved him, gradually. As spring yielded to early summer, Rusty began to trust the family, discovering the simple pleasures of his new life, the secure routine of morning walks, afternoon fetch sessions in the fenced backyard, and evening cuddles on the living room rug, the steady meals that came without fail each morning and night, small acts of kindness that healed wounds deeper than the physical ones that had long since faded. Emma noticed the change first in the little things, the way Rusty's tail now wagged when John came home from work, the gentle patience he showed with Lily, who insisted on reading her picture books aloud to him, the playful bows he'd started, offering to Tyler inviting games of chase around the yard, the trust he showed in falling asleep on his back beside Emma as she worked from home, exposing his vulnerable belly, something the vet said showed complete trust. By the time the fateful Tuesday in July arrived, Rusty had become an integral part of the Anderson family. His anxious behaviors mostly faded, replaced by the gentle, calm temperament typical of his breed, though he still maintained a certain watchful quality of vigilance, born from experience that never quite disappeared. No one could have predicted the transformation that would occur that rainy morning, the moment when Rusty's past as an abandoned, lonely creature would collide with his present as a beloved family pet, the instant when some inexplicable canine instinct would drive him to behavior so out of character it would leave the Andersons questioning everything they thought they knew about the quiet companion who had gradually stolen their hearts. That Tuesday had begun like any other summer day during Tyler and Lily's vacation. Emma working at her home office, John heading off to his job at the local bank. The children sleeping late, the golden retriever making his usual morning rounds of the house, checking on each family member before settling on the cool kitchen tiles near Emma's feet as she answered emails. None of them could have imagined that by afternoon their gentle Rusty would be transformed into a creature driven by some primal understanding beyond human comprehension, that the backyard they'd played in all summer harbored a secret only a dog with Rusty's particular history could sense. Tuesday morning dawned bright and clear, a perfect July day with the promise of summer warmth and endless possibility. Emma rose at 6, her usual routine beginning with a quiet cup of coffee on the back porch before the house stirred to life. Rusty, padding softly behind her, his morning ritual of checking the backyard perimeter while she sipped her coffee, as familiar as the sunrise. The forecast had mentioned possible afternoon storms, but the morning sky showed no hint of the weather to come. Just endless blue stretching over their suburban neighborhood, birds already singing in the maple tree that shaded the corner of their yard, where the old swing set stood, a relic from the previous owners that Tyler had outgrown. But Lily still enjoyed. John left for work at 7:30, kissing Emma goodbye, ruffling Rusty's ears with affection, the dog leaning into his touch with the contentment of a creature who had finally found his place in the world. Tyler and Lily emerged from their rooms an hour later, drawn by the smell of pancakes Emma had made, taking advantage of the summer vacation to create a more leisurely breakfast than school days allowed. By 10 o'clock, the day had settled into its comfortable rhythm. Emma working at her laptop. In the home office she'd set up in the spare bedroom, Lily coloring at the kitchen table, Tyler reading on the living room couch, Rusty moving between them as if conducting regular welfare checks on his family before settling down for his mid-morning nap in the patch of sunlight that streamed through the bay window. The first subtle change came just before noon, the golden retriever suddenly lifting his head from his paws, ears perked forward attentive to something no one else could detect. Emma barely noticed the behavior typing an important email to a client. Rusty often alerted to squirrels or neighborhood cats. Nothing unusual in his momentary vigilance, but then he stood abandoning his sunny spot to pace between the living room and kitchen, his nails clicking rhythmically on the hardwood floor, the sound eventually drawing Emma's attention away from her work. "What's up, buddy?" she asked as Rusty paused by the back door. His usual signal for needing to go outside. Emma opened this door expecting him to dart out for a quick bathroom break, but instead he stood frozen on the threshold, nose lifted to the air, testing the breeze, his body suddenly tense with an alertness that seemed excessive even for his watchful nature. Emma glanced at the sky, noticing for the first time the gathering clouds on the horizon, dark and heavy, with the promise of the forecasted storm. Perhaps he sensed the changing barometric pressure. Many dogs grew anxious before storms, though Rusty had never shown particular weather sensitivity before. "He'll be fine," she assured Tyler, who had looked up from his book at Rusty's unusual behavior. Dogs just get weird sometimes before rain, but Rusty didn't move, continuing his statue-like stance at the threshold until Lily approached, curious about his behavior. The moment her small hand touched his back, he bolted into the yard as if released from a spell. The clouds moved faster than expected, the bright morning yielding to premature afternoon. Darkness as the storm front approached, winds picking up, whipping through the trees with increasing intensity. Emma called the children inside, sensing the imminent downpour, only then realizing Rusty hadn't returned. She stepped onto the back porch, calling his name, expecting to see him patrolling the fence line or perhaps investigating an interesting scent. Instead, she spotted him in the far corner of the yard near the old oak tree, standing rigidly still, staring at the ground with such intensity it sent a chill through her. Despite the humid air, Rusty, Tyler called from behind her, noticing the dog's strange behavior. "Come inside, boy. It's going to rain for the first time since joining their family." Rusty ignored Tyler's call completely, as if he hadn't heard or as if something more important demanded his attention. The first fat raindrops began to fall, spattering the patio with dark circles as Emma watched Rusty lower his nose to the ground, circling one particular spot with growing agitation. "He's probably found a mole hole," Emma said, trying to reassure herself as much as the children go back inside. "I'll get him." But before she could step off the porch, Rusty did something entirely unexpected. He began to dig, not the playful excavations of a dog burying a toy or chasing a scent, but focused, deliberate, digging, his front paws moving with urgency that seemed almost desperate. "Rusty, stop," Emma called sharply, using the command that had always worked before. But the dog didn't even glance her way, continuing his frenzied digging. As if possessed by some unseen force, the rain intensified, quickly becoming a downpour that drenched Emma as she crossed the yard, reaching Rusty. Just as Tyler emerged from the house, rain jacket hastily pulled over his t-shirt. "Mom, what's wrong with him?" the boy asked, worry evident in his voice. "I don't know," Emma admitted, trying to take hold of Rusty's collar, but the normally gentle dog pulled away with a determination she'd never witnessed before, returning immediately to his digging, the wet earth now turning to mud that splattered his golden coat and Emma's legs. "Let me try," Tyler said, kneeling beside his dog, Rusty. "Hey boy, it's me, time to come inside." But Rusty only paused long enough to glance at Tyler. with an expression that seemed almost apologetic before returning to his urgent task. The hole growing deeper with each passing minute, mud caking his paws, his beautiful coat soaked and filthy from the rain. "And Earth, something's really wrong, Tyler?" said fear creeping into his voice. He never acts like Thisbe. Now John had been called Emma's worried voice on the phone, bringing him home early. From the bank, he arrived to find his wife and son drenched in the backyard, the storm in full force. Rain pelting down in sheets as they stood helplessly, watching their family pet dig with single-minded purpose. "What the hell?" John shouted over the storm. "Has he gone crazy? He won't stop." Emma explained, "He won't even let us touch him. It's like he's in some kind of trance." John approached confidently, certain his authoritative presence would break through whatever had possessed their pet. "Rusty, stop this now." His voice firm with the expectation of immediate obedience, but when he reached for the dog, Rusty did something that shocked them all. He growled low and warning, a sound they had never heard from him before, baring teeth briefly at John before returning to his desperate excavation. Lily watched from the back door, tears mixing with raindrops on her cheeks. "What's happening to Rusty?" she cried. "Is he turning bad?" "No, honey," Emma reassured her. "Something's bothering him, something important." The hole had grown significant, now nearly 2 feet deep and widening as Rusty worked with manic energy. Despite his obvious exhaustion, his breathing labored, his legs trembling with fatigue, yet driven by some incomprehensible urgency that wouldn't allow him to stop. "Should we call someone?" John asked the vet animal, control the rain plastering his hair to his forehead as he watched their beloved pet transform before their eyes into a creature they hardly recognized. And then it happened as John reached for his phone to make the call. Emma stepped closer to the hole, trying one last time to intervene. When she heard it barely audible above the storm, a sound so faint and unexpected, it froze her in place. "Wait," she gasped, grabbing John's arm. "Listen." They stood silent in the pouring rain, straining to hear what had caught Emma's attention. And then it came again, a tiny mewling cry from beneath the earth, a sound that explained everything and nothing, a sound that turned Rusty's inexplicable behavior into something far more mysterious and heartbreaking than they could have imagined. "Did you hear that?" Emma whispered, her voice barely audible above the storm, her eyes wide with disbelief as she stared at the muddy hole Rusty had created. John nodded slowly, his expression shifting from frustration to confusion. "There's something down there," Rusty whined urgently, as if confirming their realization, his digging now taking on new meaning to the stunned family. No longer the actions of a pet gone mad, but a desperate rescue attempt they hadn't understood until this moment. The dog glanced up at them briefly, his amber eyes seeming to plead for help, before returning to his mission with renewed vigor. "He knows," Tyler said, awe in his voice. "Somehow he knows something's alive down there." Emma knelt beside the hole, heedless of the mud soaking through her jeans, trying to peer into the darkness Rusty had excavated. But the rain filled the depression almost as quickly as the dog could dig out the soil. John's hand on her shoulder steadied her as they exchanged a look of determination. "I'll get a shovel," John said, turning toward the garage, no longer concerned about stopping Rusty, but instead focused on helping him. Emma's nursing training kicked in immediately, her mind racing through possibilities. What living creatures could be buried in their backyard and still surviving? How long had it been there? How had Rusty detected it through feet of soil? When they'd lived in the house for months without suspicion, her thoughts were interrupted by Lily's small voice from the porches. "Rusty saving something, Mommy," the little girl called out, clutching her raincoat tightly around her as she watched the scene unfold. "Sweetheart," Emma called back, trying to keep her voice calm, though her heart raced with the urgency of the situation. Rusty heard something underground. He's trying to help. John returned with 2 shovels, handing one to Tyler, who accepted it, with the serious responsibility of a boy becoming a man in a moment of crisis. The 3 of them formed a circle around Rusty, the dog's frantic digging, now complemented by their more powerful tools, moving earth methodically around the edges of the hole he had started. Rusty's paws were bleeding. Emma noticed with a pang of sympathy the soft pads torn by rocks and roots, but he showed no sign of stopping despite his obvious pain, his golden coat now a dark brown mask of mud, his sides heaving with exertion as he worked. Be careful, John cautioned as their shovels bit into the earth. We don't know what's down there, or how deep Tyler dug with focused intensity following his father's example, careful not to disrupt Rusty's central excavation site, but widening the hole to give the dog more room. They worked in desperate silence, save for the rhythmic sounds of metal cutting earth and Rusty's labored breathing. The rain continued mercilessly drenching them completely, the summer storm unleashing its full fury as if determined to hinder their rescue effort. Water pooled in the deepening hole, requiring Emma to use a bucket from the garage to bail it out, while John and Tyler continued digging. There it is. Again, John said, suddenly freezing in place as the cry came louder, this time more distinct, a high-pitched mewling sound that reminded Emma of kittens. She gasped. It sounds like kittens. Rusty whined in agreement, his digging becoming more precise now, more careful, as if he knew they were getting close to the source, his powerful sense of smell guiding him with greater accuracy than their human senses could provide. Tyler's shovel hit something solid, producing a dull thud that wasn't the sound of earth or stone. "What's that?" he asked. Pulling back, John knelt, using his hands now to clear mud away from whatever Tyler had discovered, revealing what appeared to be some kind of container partially exposed in the wall of the hole they'd created. Emma leaned closer, trying to make out details through the curtain of rain. "That's a box," she said. "Some kind of metal." "Box." Rusty barked sharply, pawing at the edge of the container. With unmistakable intent, his message clear, whatever he'd been trying to reach was inside. John worked carefully to excavate around the box, without disturbing it further, the cries now clearly audible, even through the metal and the storm's fury. "They've been buried alive," Emma said, horror dawning as she realized the implications. Her medical training telling her that whatever was inside was running out of time, if it hadn't already. The miracle being that Rusty had somehow detected their presence when no human could have known. John managed to free the container from its earthen prison. Lifting it carefully from the hole, it was smaller than they'd expected, perhaps the size of a shoebox made of some kind of metal that had protected its contents from the surrounding soil, Rusty dancing anxiously around them as John carried it to the relative shelter of the porch, Lily backing away with wide eyes as her father set it down. "It looks like an old ammunition box," John said, examining it quickly, "the kind used for military storage, waterproof sealed. But there are air holes drilled in the sides. Someone put them in here deliberately." Emma realized anger mixing with her concern as John worked to open the box's rusted latches, Rusty pushing his mud-covered body between them, all focused on the container as if nothing else in the world mattered. The latches finally gave way with a metallic groan, John lifting the lid carefully to reveal a nest of dirty fabric. Inside and huddled together in a barely moving mass, 5 tiny kittens, their eyes still closed their bodies, no larger than John's palm, their pitiful cries now clear and unmistakable. "They're newborns." Emma gasped her nurse's assessment. "Immediate. Barely a few days old. They need help right now." Rusty whined softly, nosing gently at the edge of the box, his entire body trembling with exhaustion. Now that his mission was accomplished, his bloody paws leaving smears on the porch, his sides heaving with the effort of his hours-long rescue, but his eyes never leaving the tiny creatures he had somehow known were there. Tiller knelt beside his dog, wrapping his arms around Rusty's mud-soaked body. "You did it, boy," he whispered, tears mixing with rain and mud on his face. "You saved them." Emily approached cautiously, peering into the box with wonder. who would put baby kittens in a box in the ground. She asked the innocent question hanging in the air between the adults, who exchanged grim looks over it. "The children's heads. We need to get them inside," Emma said, taking control of the situation. "They need warmth, food, medical attention." Immediately, she reached for the box, but Rusty growled softly, not threatening but protective. "It's okay, boy," John soothed. "We're going to help." The Rusty seemed to understand, allowing Emma to lift the box with its precious cargo while John gathered towels from the bathroom. Tyler helping his exhausted dog up the porch steps and into the house, the storm continuing to rage outside, as if mourning what had almost been a tragedy. Inside, Emma quickly converted a laundry basket into a makeshift incubator, lining it with heating pads set on low, covering them with soft towels, while John called the emergency vet, explaining their bizarre discovery and desperate situation. Rusty refused to leave the kittens, watching with vigilant attention as Emma carefully cleaned each tiny body with warm washcloths, assessing their condition with professional efficiency. Tyler and Lily hovering nearby, their eyes wide with the drama unfolding in their kitchen. They're severely dehydrated. Emma reported some signs of hypothermia despite the summer heat. The metal box must have been cold underground. "I don't know how they've survived. This long Rusty's been digging for hours," Tyler said. "Maybe he heard them this morning, and that's why he was acting strange." The smallest kitten barely moved as Emma cleaned it, its tiny body limp compared to its siblings, who at least squirmed weakly. Against her touch, "This one's in trouble," she murmured, her expression grave as she worked to stimulate its circulation. Laylee started to cry, pressing her face against her father's side. "Are they going to die, Daddy?" John stroked his daughter's hair, his own emotions barely in check. "We're doing everything we can, Princess." The vet is on the way outside. The storm continued, unabated thunder crashing overhead as if nature itself was participating in the drama of life and death playing out in the Andersonite family kitchen. Rusty's mysterious discovery raising more questions than answers as they fought to save the tiny lives he had somehow known were hidden beneath the earth. The wait for the veterinarian felt eternal, each minute stretching, as Emma fought to keep the tiny kittens alive, their fragile bodies barely clinging to life. Rusty remained vigilant, refusing food or water, his mud-caked form a stark contrast to the clean towels surrounding the makeshift incubator, his focus entirely on the kittens he had somehow known were buried in the yard. The doorbell finally rang nearly 45 minutes after John's desperate call. Dr. Melissa Chen, their regular veterinarian, stood on the porch, rain dripping from her coat, medical bag in hand, her face composed but serious as John ushered her inside. "Sorry for the delay," she said efficiently, shedding her wet coat. "Roads are flooding everywhere." "Where are they?" Emma led her to the kitchen, where the laundry basket sat on the counter, heating pads humming softly beneath towels. The 5 kittens huddled together, their tiny bodies occasionally twitching with weak movements, Rusty rising from his position on the floor, his vigilance unbroken despite his exhaustion. Dr. Chen's professional demeanor softened at the sight of the mud-covered retriever guarding the kittens. "So he's the hero of the hour," she said, kneeling briefly to examine Rusty's torn paws before turning her attention to the critical patients. Her examination was thorough, but gentle, checking each kitten individually, her expression growing more concerned as she worked the smallest one, barely responding to her touch. "They're probably about 3 days old," she confirmed severely. "Dehydrated, hypothermic. It's a miracle they're alive at all." "Can you save them?" Tyler asked, his voice small with concern as he stood beside Rusty, one hand resting on the dog's mud-encrusted fur. "I'll do my best," Dr. Chen said. "Honestly, but opening her bag to retrieve supplies, I need to get fluids into them immediately, stabilize their body temperature. The next few hours will be critical." The family watched as she worked with practiced efficiency, preparing tiny amounts of fluid in a syringe, administering it drop by drop to each kitten's mouth. Showing Emma how to continue the process, she set up a more sophisticated warming system from her emergency kit. checked for injuries or abnormalities in each tiny body. They appear to be from the same litter. She noted their coloring similar, despite being hard to determine under the dirt and grime. 2 males, 3 females, all severely underweight, but no obvious congenital defects. As Dr. Chen worked, Rusty watched attentively, occasionally whining softly when a kitten would cry, somehow seeming to understand the gravity of the situation. The veterinarian glanced at him with professional curiosity. "How exactly did you find them?" she asked, turning to John. And Emma John described Rusty's bizarre behavior, the frantic digging that had continued for hours despite bleeding paws and exhaustion, the family's eventual realization that he was trying to reach something underground. Dr. Chen listened with increasing amazement. "And you had no idea they were there until you heard them cry," she clarified. When Emma confirmed, "We've lived here for almost a year. The spot where Rusty was digging is nowhere near where we usually spend time. It's by the old oak tree in the far corner of the yard." Chen shook her head in wonder. Most dogs have an acute sense of smell, but this, she gestured to the scene before them. "This is extraordinary." He detected newborn kittens through 2 feet of soil during a rainstorm, nearly 3 feet. John corrected, and he knew something was wrong before the storm even started. The veterinarian gently stroked Rusty's head with newfound respect. "You're quite remarkable, aren't you?" While Dr. Chen finished treating the kittens, Emma examined the metal box they'd been found in, now sitting on the kitchen table, cleaned of mud. It was indeed an old ammunition box, military grade, with a rubber seal around the edge that had kept out soil and most moisture, but with small holes drilled in the sides, barely large enough to allow minimal air exchange. "Who would do this?" Emma whispered, anger mixing with her confusion. As she examined the box, John stood beside her, his expression grim. "Someone who wanted them to die slowly," he said, but wanted to give themselves plausible deniability if caught, not outright killing them, but not giving them a chance either. The fabric inside had been arranged as a crude nest. Emma noted an old t-shirt and what appeared to be a small towel, both filthy but deliberately placed. "There's no way these kittens crawled in here themselves," she said. "Someone put them in this box, sealed it, and buried it in our yard." "But why?" Tyler asked, overhearing his parents' conversation as he helped Dr. Chen. "Why would anyone do that to baby kittens? Some people." John began, then stopped, choosing his words carefully when faced with his son's innocent question. "Some people don't see animals as living beings deserving of care. They see them as problems to be solved." The clinical assessment felt inadequate to describe the cruelty of the act, but John couldn't bring himself to fully explain the darkness that would lead someone to such an action, not to his 10-year-old son, whose heart was so clearly invested in the rescue unfolding. Before them, Dr. Chen finished her immediate treatment. The kittens, now stable though still in critical condition, she packed specialized formula tiny bottles, a feeding chart, and additional medical supplies into a care package for the family. "They need feeding every 2 hours around the clock," she instructed. "Keep them warm but not hot. Watch for signs of respiratory distress. I'll come back tomorrow to check on them, but call me immediately if one deteriorates." The storm had finally passed, leaving behind a drenched landscape and flooded streets, the late afternoon sun breaking through clouds as Dr. Chen prepared to leave. She paused at the door, turning to Emma and John. "I should report this," she said quietly. "It's a clear case of animal cruelty." Emma nodded, looking back toward the kitchen where Rusty lay beside the laundry basket, his muddy body a sharp contrast to the clean floor, his vigil unwavering despite his obvious exhaustion. "Please do," she agreed. "Someone did this deliberately." After the veterinarian left, the family gathered in the kitchen, the reality of their situation settling in 5 newborn kittens requiring round-the-clock care, a mystery of how they came to be buried in their yard, and a dog whose inexplicable behavior had saved lives against impossible odds. "We need to clean you up, buddy," John said gently to Rusty. Those paws need attention, but when John tried to lead Rusty to the bathroom, the dog whined, digging his feet in refusing to leave his position beside the kittens. He's afraid they'll disappear if he looks away, Tyler observed with a child's intuitive understanding of the dog's psychology. Emma knelt beside Rusty, her voice soft but firm. They're safe now because of you. We'll take care of them. But we need to take care of you, too. Whether Rusty understood her words or simply trusted her tone, he finally allowed John to guide him to the bathroom for a much-needed bath, Tyler following to help clean his heroic pet, while Emma and Lily remained with the kittens, administering the next round of formula according to Dr. Chen's instructions. In the bathroom, John gently rinsed away layers of mud, revealing Rusty's golden coat and the extent of his injuries, his paws raw and torn from hours of desperate digging through soil and roots. Tyler helped apply the antibiotic ointment Dr. Chen had left, bandaging each paw with careful attention. He knew Dad, Tyler said as he worked, something we couldn't hear or see or smell. He just knew they needed help. John knotted his throat tight with emotion as he considered what would have happened without Rusty's intervention. He thought about the tiny creatures fighting for life in his kitchen, buried alive by human cruelty, saved by canine compassion. The contrast, stark and humbling. By evening, Rusty, clean and bandaged, had resumed his position beside the kitten basket, his body exhausted, but his mind clearly unwilling to abandon his vigil. The family worked in shifts through the night, following Dr. Chen's instructions for feeding and monitoring, Lily insisting on helping. Despite the late hours, her small fingers gently stroking each kitten after its feeding. Midnight approached. Emma found John standing at the kitchen window, staring out at the dark yard where, just hours before they had made their extraordinary discovery. "What are you thinking about?" she asked softly. Joining him, he turned to her, his expression troubled. Who would do this, and why our yard specifically? Did they know we weren't likely to notice that corner, rarely used? Do we know anyone who would commit such a deliberate act of cruelty? Emma had no answers, only questions multiplying with each passing hour. As they worked to save the tiny lives Rusty had somehow detected against all odds, a mystery that had literally been buried beneath their feet as they lived their normal lives, unaware of the silent tragedy unfolding in their own backyard. Emma's nursing experience proved invaluable as night descended on the Anderson household, the family transforming their kitchen into an emergency neonatal unit for the 5 tiny lives teetering between survival and death. John cleared the kitchen table, setting up a more permanent warming station with heating pads, carefully monitored thermometers, and soft blankets, creating a controlled environment for the fragile kittens. "We need to name them," Lily insisted, as she watched her mother prepare the special formula. Dr. Chen had left her 7-year-old mind processing the crisis through the simple act of naming, giving identity to each struggling creature. "Not yet, sweetie," Emma cautioned gently, her focus on measuring precise amounts of formula. "We don't want to get too attached. They're still very sick." But Tyler understood what his mother couldn't say. Aloud, naming the kittens would make it harder if they didn't survive the night. He had overheard Dr. Chen's whispered assessment to his parents that the smallest kitten in particular might not make it despite their best efforts. Rusty refused to leave the kitchen, despite his exhaustion and injured paws, his body curled protectively near the makeshift incubator, his eyes tracking every movement. The family made around his rescued charges, only accepting water and food. When John placed the bowls directly beside him, they established a rotation for the night. John taking the first shift from 8 to midnight, Emma from midnight to 4 a.m., and Tyler insisting he could handle the 4 to 8 morning shift, with John's promise to help if needed. Lily reluctantly going to bed only after extracting promises that she would be woken if anything changed. The feeding process was painstaking, each kitten requiring individual attention held carefully as Emma demonstrated the proper technique, using the specialized bottle with its tiny nipple dropping formula slowly into their mouths ensuring they swallowed without aspirating the liquid. Into their lungs between feedings, they needed stimulation to urinate and defecate, something their mother would normally provide by licking them. This is how new human babies are. Sometimes Emma explained to Tyler, as she demonstrated with a warm, damp cloth, they can't do anything on their own. They're completely dependent. The smallest kitten concerned her most. Its tiny body barely responsive during the 8 o'clock feeding, its weight noticeably less than its siblings when measured on the Pria kitchen scale. John had repurposed its mouth barely opening to accept the formula. We should try the syringe method for this one. Emma decided, retrieving the oral syringe Dr. Chen had left for emergency use, 1 drop at a time just inside the cheek. John watched his wife work her professional training, evident in every careful movement, her face composed in the calm efficiency he recognized from past family medical emergencies when she became not just mom, but Nurse Emma. Their emotional anchor in crises between feedings, they cleaned the ammunition box more thoroughly, looking for clues about its origin or who might have used it. The box itself was unremarkable. Military surplus available at any Army-Navy store. The fabric inside generic nothing. That would identify who had committed this act of cruelty. The 10 o'clock feeding showed slight improvement in 4 of the kittens, their weak mewling growing marginally stronger, their tiny mouths more actively seeking the bottle. But the smallest one continued to decline, its body temperature dropping despite the warming pads, its movements growing more lethargic. By the midnight shift change, Emma found John sitting at the kitchen table, the smallest kitten cradled against his chest inside. His shirt, his expression grim as he looked up at her. It was cooling down too fast. He explained, I remembered from when Tyler was born and had jaundice how they said skin-to-skin contact helps regulate temperature. Emma placed her hand on his shoulder. Feeling the burden he carried, I'll take over now, she said softly, but John shook his head. I've got this one for now. He said, you focus on the others. They need your expertise more. His voice catching slightly as the tiny creature shifted against his. Skin Rusty watched this exchange with alert attention, his eyes never leaving the smallest kitten, as if understanding its precarious hold on life throughout the night. He remained vigilant, occasionally rising despite his bandaged paws to check each kitten after feedings, nosing them gently before returning to his guard position, the 2am. Feeding became the night's turning point. Emma, waking John, who had dozed off, the smallest kitten still tucked against his chest. It's not taking the formula, she whispered, concern, etching lines around her eyes. Its blood sugar must be crashing. John, fully awake now, carefully extracted the kitten, its body limp and cool despite his body heat. What do we do? He asked the question, hanging between them both. Knowing without speaking that they were losing the battle for this smallest life, Rusty whined softly, rising on his bandaged paws, moving closer to Emma as she held the failing kitten. We need to get some glucose into it. But it won't suck, Emma said, frustration edging her voice as she tried again with the syringe, only to have the precious drops of formula dribble from the kitten's unresponsive mouth. I'll wake Tyler. John decided our son's hands are smaller. Maybe he can help. Tyler appeared in the kitchen minutes later, sleep forgotten as his father explained the situation. The boy's face serious beyond his years as he assessed the tiny creature in his mother's hands. What about honey? He suggested, suddenly his voice brightening with inspiration. For diabetic emergencies, isn't that what you always said? Mom rub honey on their gums when they can't swallow? Emma looked at her son with surprised pride. That's exactly right. Tyler, where did you learn that? I listen when you talk, Mom, Tyler said with a shrug, then turned to the pantry, finding the honey bear and bringing it to his mother, with Tyler holding the kitten. Emma carefully applied a tiny amount of honey to its gums, the simplest form of glucose absorption when swallowing isn't possible. Her nursing knowledge guiding her through this improvised treatment, the family holding their breath as they waited for any response. Minutes passed in tense silence before the kitten's mouth made a slight smacking movement, its tiny pink tongue. Emerging to lick at the sweet substance, Emma immediately repeated the process, this time with slightly more honey watching, with professional assessment as color gradually returned to the kitten's gums. "It's working," John whispered, hardly daring to believe as the tiny body began to show signs of revival, its limbs flexing weakly against Tyler's careful hold. Tyler's quick thinking saved it. Emma acknowledged as they prepared a more diluted formula mixture to try again, the honey buying precious. Time for the kitten system to stabilize enough to accept nutrition. Rusty pressed closer, clearly agitated, until Tyler lowered the kitten where the dog could see and smell it. The retriever's inspection gentle but thorough, before he licked the kitten once with infinite care, as if offering his own medicine. The family, too, moved by the moment to correct this breach of hygiene. Through the remaining hours of darkness, they fought for the smallest kitten's life. Tyler refusing to return to bed, staying awake through his designated shift and beyond the honey treatment repeated when necessary. The feedings becoming more successful as dawn approached, Rusty maintaining his vigil, occasionally resting his head on Tyler's knee as the boy cradled the recovering kitten. Morning's first light streaming through the kitchen windows. All 5 kittens had survived the night. The smallest one still precarious, but responsive, its tiny body now actively seeking warmth and formula, a fighter. Emerging from what had seemed an inevitable loss, Lily bounced into the kitchen at 7, her eyes immediately seeking the kittens. "Did they make it?" she asked, her voice hushed, with the understanding that death had been a possibility in the night. "They did, sweetie?" Emma confirmed, exhaustion evident in her voice as she prepared the morning bottles, all of them. "The little one, too," Lily gasped, eyes widening as she peered into the warming box, where 5 kittens now squirmed with noticeably more vigor than the previous evening. Tyler smiled at his sister, his fatigue forgotten in the triumph of the moment. "The little one especially," he said with well-earned pride. "It's a survivor." Rusty thumped his tail against the floor at these words, as if understanding the significance of what they had accomplished together through the long night, his brown eyes meeting Tyler's in a moment of connection that transcended the usual bond between boy and dog. "No, can we name them?" Lily asked, her focus practical now. That survival seemed more certain. Emma laughed softly, relenting in the face of Dawn's promise and her daughter's persistence. "Okay," she agreed. "What did you have in mind?" Lily pointed to the smallest kitten without hesitation. "That one's miracle," she declared appropriate. The family couldn't disagree. Dr. Chen arrived promptly at 9 the next morning, her face registering pleasant surprise as she examined each kitten. In turn, "They're all still with us," she remarked with professional admiration, her hands gentle as she assessed the smallest one. "Miracle," as Lily had named it. "The honey was Tyler's idea," Emma explained, as the veterinarian checked the kitten's hydration and responsiveness. "We nearly lost this one around 2. Dr. Chen nodded approvingly. Quick thinking, she said to Tyler, who hovered nearby, still protective of his overnight charge and good instincts. The glucose gave it just enough energy to keep fighting. She completed her examination, updating the feeding chart with new instructions, slightly larger amounts, at 3-hour intervals, rather than 2 for the 4 stronger kittens. With Miracle still requiring the more frequent schedule, her prognosis cautiously optimistic. "The next 48 hours will tell us more," she said, "but they've already beaten the odds surviving the burial. The exposure and the first night, the fact that they're all still with us is remarkable. Remarkable indeed." John agreed, his gaze moving to Rusty, who had finally succumbed to exhaustion. Sleeping deeply on his bed in the corner of the kitchen, his bandaged paws occasionally twitching in dreams, Dr. Chen followed his gaze. "Rusty's quite the hero," she observed, examining the sleeping dog from a distance to avoid disturbing him. "The police officer who took my report last night was quite interested in the whole story, particularly how the kittens came to be buried in your yard, Emma." And John exchanged glances. "Police report?" John questioned. "We thought you were just reporting the animal cruelty aspect." Dirt? Chen nodded, sorting her supplies back into her medical bag. It is primarily an animal cruelty case, but burying them specifically in your yard raises questions. They've assigned an officer to look into it. Apparently, there's been an uptick in animal abuse cases in the county. Recently, they're taking it quite seriously after the veterinarian left with promises to return. The following day, the family settled into a new rhythm centered around the kitten's care schedule. Emma calling in to work to take an emergency personal day, John rearranging. Meetings to work from home, Tyler and Lily absorbed in their roles as assistant caretakers. By afternoon, Rusty had recovered enough to resume his position near the kittens. His vigilance slightly relaxed, but still attentive, especially toward Miracle, the smallest kitten seeming to hold a special place in his protective instincts. A knock at the door around 4 interrupted their carefully established routine. A police officer stood on their porch introducing herself as Officer Sandra Martinez, Animal Crimes Division, her notebook already in hand as John invited her inside. She interviewed each family member separately, taking detailed notes about the discovery, asking specific questions about the ammunition box, the condition of the kittens, the approximate depth of burial, her professionalism tempered with genuine concern. Had you noticed anyone unusual around your property in the days before the discovery? She asked Emma as they sat at the dining room table, the rest of the family in the living room. Emma thought carefully. No one comes to mind. We're fairly private. The neighbors keep to themselves, mostly. Officer Martinez nodded, making another note. Would you mind if I take a look at where they were found? John led her to the backyard, where the evidence of their desperate dig remained a large muddy hole near the oak tree. Officer Martinez photographed the site, measuring the depth, examining the surrounding area with methodical attention. The ground was recently disturbed, she observed, pointing to certain areas around the hole, not just from your digging yesterday, but before. There are signs of earlier soil displacement, extending beyond where you dug. What does that mean? John asked, watching as she took more photographs. Someone spent time here, she explained, several days ago at least, possibly preparing the site or burying something else. We might want to expand the search area. When they returned inside, Officer Martinez examined the ammunition box, now empty, but preserved as potential evidence, her expression growing more concerned as she studied it. This isn't random, she said. Finally, looking up at the family, her eyes serious. Someone specifically targeted your property. Tyler, who had been listening from the kitchen doorway, spoke up. Why would someone put kittens in our yard to die? We didn't even live here a year ago. Officer Martinez considered her words carefully, aware of the children present. We're investigating several possibilities. She said one theory is that this might be connected to the previous owners of this property. Do you know anything about them? John shook his head. The realtor mentioned they relocated suddenly for work. Their moving company left some things behind. We found old furniture in the basement. They said we could keep or dispose of, but that's all we know. The officer made another note. Can you give me your realtor's information? We'd like to contact the previous owners. The conversation shifted to the kitten's condition. Officer Martinez expressing genuine admiration for Rusty's inexplicable awareness of their plight. Animals sometimes sense things we can't, she acknowledged as the retriever accompanied her to the door, clearly assessing whether she represented any threat to his charges before, seeming to approve her presence. I'll be in touch, she said as she left. The investigation is ongoing. Please call immediately if you notice anything unusual around your property. With the official visit concluded, the family returned to their care routine. The afternoon bleeding into evening feedings and temperature checks continuing with clockwork precision. Each sibling in the litter showing incremental improvement, though Miracle still lagged significantly behind in weight and activity that night. As darkness settled over the house, Emma found John in the backyard, flashlight in hand, examining the area around the hole where Rusty had made his desperate discovery. "What are you looking for?" she asked, joining him in the damp grass. "I don't know." "Exactly," John admitted something Officer Martinez said about earlier. "Soil disturbance got me thinking. What if there's more buried out here? What if the kittens weren't the only thing someone wanted to hide?" Emma shivered, despite the summer warmth. "The implications disturbing should we dig." More, John shook his head. "Not without the police present. If there is something else, we don't want to disturb potential evidence." They returned inside to find Tyler asleep on the kitchen floor beside Rusty. The boy's hand resting on the dog's back, both exhausted from their night of vigilance. Lily had constructed an elaborate nest of stuffed animals around the kitten's warming box. Her contribution to making them feel at home, her innocence, a stark contrast to the darkness they had encountered. "We should move him," Emma whispered, gesturing to Tyler. "Let him stay." John decided covering their son with a light blanket. He earned his place there. The midnight feeding found Emma alone in the kitchen. The house quiet save for Rusty's soft breathing as she carefully fed each kitten, recording weights and observations in the journal. Dr. Chen had provided Miracle still concerning, but fighting, accepting almost a full serving of formula before falling into the milk-drunk stupor that indicated a successful feeding. As she worked, Emma's mind circled back to Officer Martinez's questions: who would bury newborn kittens alive in their yard, and why? What connection could it have to the previous owners, whom they had never met? What else might be hidden beneath the innocuous surface of their family home? These questions haunted her as she completed the feeding ritual. By the 3 a.m. check, Miracle gave Emma a true moment of hope. The tiny kitten actively squirming in her palm, its miniature mouth opening in a silent mew as it sought the bottle. Its strength noticeably improved from even hours before. "You're living up to your name, aren't you, little one?" Emma whispered as the kitten suckled. With unprecedented vigor, a fighter emerging from what had seemed certain defeat, Rusty raised his head at her words, his amber eyes meeting Emma's in the dim kitchen light. Something unspoken passing between them, an understanding that transcended species, a shared commitment to the fragile lives they were nurturing through the uncertain darkness. Toward morning's promise outside, in the quiet neighborhood, a figure moved silently past the Andersons' house, pausing briefly to study the property. Before continuing onward unnoticed, in the pre-dawn stillness, the investigation that had begun with buried kittens just starting to unravel threads of a mystery that reached deeper than any of them yet realized. Morning brought cautious optimism to the Anderson household, all 5 kittens having survived their second night, their tiny bodies showing more vigor, their cries stronger, more insistent. During the 6 a.m. feeding, even Miracle showed improvement, accepting formula, eagerly squirming with newfound energy in Tyler's careful hands. Their fighters, Emma observed, as she updated the weight chart, each kitten showing small but significant gains, except for Miracle, who had maintained weight rather than gaining, but had not lost ground either, stability itself a victory. For the smallest of the Litterby 9 o'clock, John had made a decision. "We need answers," he announced over a hasty breakfast of toast and coffee. The family still operating on the interrupted sleep schedule the kittens required. "I'm going to talk to the neighbors, see if anyone noticed anything unusual." Lur looked up from his cereal. "Can I come too, Dad? I want to help." John considered his son's request, seeing the determination in Tyler's eyes, the boy's sense of responsibility toward the kittens, and Rusty having matured him overnight in ways John was still processing. "All right," he agreed. "We'll do it together." Man to man, they set out mid-morning, Rusty initially reluctant to leave his post beside the kittens, but eventually persuaded to join them, his bandaged paws healing, but still tender Emma and Lily remaining behind, to maintain the feeding schedule and continue transforming the laundry room into a more permanent nursery space. The Andersons' neighborhood was typical suburban America houses set back from the street with well-maintained lawns and tasteful landscaping. Most residents professionals who left early for work and returned in evening commuter waves. but Saturday morning found many at home working in yards or garages, providing John and Tyler perfect opportunities for casual conversation. Their first stop was the Miller house directly across the street, where Bill Miller was washing his car in the driveway. "Hey, Bill," John called, approaching with Tyler and Rusty beside him. "Got a minute?" Bill turned off the hose, greeting them with neighborly warmth. "Heard you had some excitement." "Yesterday the storm did a number on everyone's yards," John nodded. Keeping his tone conversational, "We actually found something unusual buried in our backyard. Wonder if you've noticed anyone hanging around the property recently. Someone who shouldn't be there." Bill's expression shifted to concern. "What kind of something?" "If you don't mind me asking," John hesitated, glancing at Tyler before continuing. "Someone buried a box with newborn kittens in it. Police are investigating it as animal cruelty." Bill's shocked expression seemed genuine. "That's horrible." "Who would do such a thing?" "No, I haven't seen anyone suspicious around your place. But Karen might have. She works from home, has a view of your front yard from her office." Karen Miller confirmed her husband's assessment, having noticed nothing unusual, though she expressed appropriate horror at the discovery, offering to help with the kittens if needed. The conversation yielding no useful information, but establishing a neighbor alliance. John found reassuring. They continued down the street, visiting 6 houses with similar results, neighbors expressing shock, offering help, but providing no actionable information until they reached the Thompson residence at the end of the block, where elderly Mrs. Thompson was tending her renowned rose garden. The kittens survived. Gloria Thompson exclaimed when John explained their mission. "That golden angel of yours saved them." What a miracle. Her enthusiasm seemed excessive until she explained, "I saw a pregnant stray cat around the neighborhood about a month ago. Tried to catch her to get her to a shelter, but she was too wild, skittish. Poor thing." John and Tyler exchanged glances. This new information potentially significant. "You think these kittens might be from that stray?" John asked. Mrs. Thompson nodded emphatically. "Absolutely. Right coloring too, tortoiseshell mama with white paws, beautiful creature, but terrified of humans. I left food for her on my porch for weeks. Then suddenly she wasn't pregnant anymore, but never saw any kittens with her. Thought maybe they hadn't survived." "Have you seen her recently?" Tyler asked, excitement in his voice at this potential. Mrs. Thompson's face fell. "No, dear, not for at least a week. Feared something might have happened to her," as they thanked Mrs. Thompson and continued their canvassing. John's mind worked through this new information. A pregnant stray disappearing after giving birth, kittens found buried without their mother. The timeline matching the approximate age Dr. Chen had estimated for the litter. Their next significant encounter came 3 houses later at the Jenkins residence, where Michael Jenkins was mowing his lawn, stopping when he saw John and Tyler approaching. "With Rusty heard about your discovery through the neighborhood text chain," Jenkins said, wiping sweat from his brow. "Actually might have something relevant for you. Saw someone in your yard about 5 days ago, thought they were gardening or something." John's attention sharpened. "Can you describe them?" Jenkins frowned, trying to recall. It was dusk, hard to see clearly, but definitely a man. Medium height, dark clothes, baseball cap pulled low, was digging in that back corner by the oak tree. "Figured maybe you'd hired someone to do landscaping work." John felt a chill despite the summer heat. "Did you recognize him?" Jenkins shook his head. "Sorry, man, was too far away. And like I said, had the cap pulled down, wouldn't have thought anything of it. Except hearing about what you found makes it suspicious." Now, Tyler looked up at his father with wide eyes that must have been when they buried the kittens. John nodded, thanking Jenkins for the information before continuing their neighborhood survey, the remaining houses yielding little additional insight, though several neighbors confirmed Mrs. Thompson's account of the pregnant stray cat that had been frequenting the area. On their way home, Tyler spotted something that had escaped their notice previously: a security camera mounted on the Petersons' garage with a potential view of their backyard. "Dad, look," he said, pointing at the device. "Maybe it caught something, Mark." Peterson answered his door in workout clothes, apologetic about his home security system. "The camera's more for show," he admitted. "Doesn't actually record anything. Just deters potential break-ins. Sorry, I can't be more help. Returning home." John found Officer Martinez had called, leaving a message asking him to contact her as soon as possible. He returned the call immediately, the officer answering on the first. "Ring Mr. Anderson," she began without preamble. "We've made some progress in the investigation. I'd like to come by again this afternoon, if that works for your family." John agreed, setting a time before rejoining Emma in the kitchen to share what they'd learned, the pregnant stray, the mysterious man digging in their yard 5 days earlier, the pieces beginning to form a disturbing picture. Emma listened carefully, her nursing instincts connecting dots. John hadn't considered if those kittens are from a feral mother, she said thoughtfully. It explains why they were so resilient. Most domesticated kittens wouldn't have survived that long underground. The feral genetics might have given them stronger survival instincts. But who would bury them, and why? Tyler asked the question they all struggled with. Before anyone could theorize further, Rusty suddenly raised his head from his position near the kittens. His ears perked forward, eyes fixed on the kitchen window, a low growl building in his throat. John moved to the window following the dog's gaze, but seeing nothing unusual in the backyard, just the disturbed earth where they had dug, and the old oak tree beyond. Rusty's behavior, however, remained alert, vigilant, as if sensing something beyond human perception. "He's been doing that on and off all morning," Emma said, concern evident in her voice. "Ever since you two left, almost like he's standing guard." John watched as Rusty maintained his focused attention, despite no visible stimulus, the dog's behavior, triggering his own protective instincts. Whatever had happened in their yard clearly wasn't over. Rusty somehow knowing what the humans were still struggling to understand, Officer Martinez arrived promptly at 2, examining the kitchen window that had triggered Rusty's alert response, noting the dog's continued vigilance. "We may want to set up temporary surveillance," she suggested. "Your dog's behavior indicates he's sensing something potentially significant." She shared what her investigation had uncovered so far. The previous owners of the Anderson home, the Carsons, had left abruptly 6 months earlier, amid rumors of financial problems and suspicious activities. Neighbors had reported frequent late-night visitors, strange noises, and finally an overnight departure that left much of their furniture and personal items behind. "The realtor sold it as is," Martinez explained, "offering you a discount because of the condition and abandoned items. We've been trying to locate the Carsons, but they seem to have disappeared. Moving company has no forwarding address." John processed this information, remembering the furniture in the basement, the odd items they'd found when moving in, things they'd attributed to normal moving oversight, now casting a more sinister shadow. "Do you think there's a connection between them and the kittens?" Emma asked the question, hanging heavy in the kitchen. Martinez nodded slowly. "We have reason to believe your property might have been used for more than just burying kittens. The Carsons had complaints filed against them for suspected animal neglect, though nothing was ever proven. Your dog's behavior suggests he's detecting something else, possibly buried on the property." Tyler's eyes widened. "More kittens," he whispered. Martinez's expression remained professional but gentle. "Possibly, or something else entirely. We'd like your permission to bring in a cadaver dog to search the property tomorrow." The word Sunday morning arrived with unexpected commotion. A local news van parked across the street from the Anderson home. A reporter and cameraman setting up on the sidewalk. Emma spotted them first while preparing the kittens' morning bottles. "John," she called urgently, "there's media outside." John joined her at the window, concern etching his features. Somehow the story had leaked, possibly through neighborhood chatter or police channels, the buried kittens and their miraculous rescue, now drawing public attention they had neither sought nor wanted. The doorbell rang moments later, John answering to find a professionally dressed woman. With a microphone and practiced smile, Kelly Matthews, Channel 6 News. She introduced herself. "Are you Mr. Anderson?" The owner of the heroic dog who rescued buried kittens, John, hesitated, protective instincts rising. "We're not interested in being on camera," he said firmly, especially not the children, but the reporter persisted. "This is such an inspiring story of animal heroism. Our viewers would love to hear how your dog knew the kittens were underground. It's getting national attention online already." This was news to John, who hadn't been monitoring social media during their crisis, the realization that they're private. Family drama had somehow become public consumption, disturbing him on multiple levels. "I'm sorry, but with an ongoing police investigation, we've been advised not to comment," before he could close the door. Officer Martinez's police cruiser pulled into the driveway her arrival, creating a momentary distraction, the reporter immediately redirecting her attention to the officer who handled the situation with professional efficiency. "This is an active investigation," Mrs. Matthews Martinez stated firmly as she approached the porch. "The Anderson family is not giving statements at this time. Please respect their privacy." Inside the house, Martinez explained the situation, regretfully. "I'm sorry about this. The department hasn't released any information. But social media moves faster than we do. Someone posted about a golden retriever digging for hours to save buried kittens, and it went viral overnight." Emma looked alarmed. "What exactly is out there?" Martinez showed them her phone, a video taken from across the street, clearly showing Rusty digging frantically in the rain. John trying to pull him away. Then the family's shocked reactions as they discovered what was buried. The footage grainy but recognizable. "A neighbor filmed this," Emma asked, disbelief in her voice. "Who would do that?" Instead of helping, Martinez shook her head. Social media culture. Sometimes people document rather than participate. The video doesn't show the kittens, just Rusty digging. And your reactions, but it has over 2 million views since yesterday evening. Tyler, who had been listening from the kitchen doorway, spoke up. "Is Rusty famous now?" Martinez smiled gently at the boy. "He's certainly getting attention as a canine hero. Which is why I came by early. The department is concerned about potential interference with our investigation. With this kind of publicity, someone might try to return to the scene." John understood immediately. "You think whoever buried the kittens might come back?" "Precisely," Martinez confirmed. "We're expediting the search warrant to bring in the cadaver dogs today rather than tomorrow, and I'll have a patrol car monitoring your street. Meanwhile, I'd suggest keeping your curtains closed and being cautious about who you talk to." The media presence continued throughout the morning, growing from 1 van to 3 by noon. Various local stations competing for the story angles emerging beyond the initial heroic dog narrative, now incorporating questions about the previous homeowners, the mysterious circumstances of their departure, and the ongoing police investigation. Emma kept the children away from windows, trying to maintain normalcy, despite the circus developing outside, focusing on the kittens' care as their most pressing concern. Dr. Chen, arriving for her daily checkup, had to navigate through reporters, her professional demeanor firmly in place, as she declined comment. "The kittens are doing remarkably well," she announced, after examining each one. "Miracle included their fighters. All of them. The worst is behind us, now barring any unforeseen complications." This positive update provided much-needed encouragement, though Miracle still remained significantly smaller than its siblings, its progress undeniable. It was now actively seeking the bottle, its eyes, though still closed, moving beneath delicate lids. Approaching the milestone of opening, Rusty's protective behavior continued. The dog, alternating between guarding the kittens and standing alert at windows and doors, his instincts clearly signaling ongoing concern about potential threats. Emma observed his pattern, noting he seemed particularly vigilant toward the backyard where the discovery had occurred. By early afternoon, the police search team arrived, 2 handlers with specially trained dogs, Officer Martinez supervising. As they established a perimeter, the media held at bay by additional officers, the Andersons watching from inside as their backyard became an official crime scene. The cadaver dog's methodical thoroughness was both impressive and disturbing, the trained animals covering every inch of the property alert for the specific scent of human remains. Their handlers interpreting subtle changes in behavior with practiced expertise. John stood with Officer Martinez on the porch, watching the process unfold. "What exactly are they looking for?" he asked, voice low to prevent the children from overhearing. Martinez kept her eyes on the search dogs. "We have reason to believe the Carsons may have been involved in more than animal neglect. Their sudden disappearance, financial irregularities, and the complaints filed against them suggest potentially criminal activity. The buried kittens might be connected to something larger." One of the dogs suddenly alerted near the shed in the far corner of the property opposite from where Rusty had discovered the kittens, its behavior changing from casual investigation to focused interest. The handler confirming the alert as significant. Martinez immediately radioed for additional personnel. Inside the house, Emma distracted Tyler and Lily with kitten care, keeping them in the laundry room away from windows that would show the increasing police activity in their backyard. Rusty, however, could not be diverted. His attention fixed on the scene outside, a low whine building in his throat as he watched the search dogs work. "We're going to need a more extensive search," Martinez informed John after consulting with the handlers. "What they're detecting isn't recent. It's likely been there for months, possibly since before you moved in. We'll need to bring in ground-penetrating radar and possibly excavation equipment." The implications hung heavy between them. Whatever was buried on their property had been there. While they lived their normal lives, gardening, playing with the children, enjoying summer evenings, completely unaware of what lay beneath the soil, the story took on new dimensions as speculation spread through social media and local news channels. Theories ranging from the plausible to the absurd. The Carsons' disappearance now central to public curiosity. Internet sleuths digging into property records, criminal databases, and neighborhood history. Emma discovered this digital investigation when her phone began receiving messages from concerned friends and family who had recognized their address and news coverage. "Is everything okay?" Several texted, "Are you and the kids safe?" The violation of privacy felt almost as disturbing as the discoveries themselves. Their family home now subject to public speculation, their personal crisis transformed into entertainment. Their address easily identifiable to anyone with internet access. By evening, the initial search concluded with concerning results. Martinez informed them privately, "We've identified at least 2 areas of interest requiring further investigation. The process will take several days. We'd recommend you consider staying elsewhere until it's complete." John and Emma exchanged looks, weighing the disruption against potential risks to the children, but the decision was complicated by the kittens still requiring round-the-clock care. The specialized equipment they'd set up in the laundry room, not easily transportable. "We have nowheres to take the kittens," Emma explained. "They need constant monitoring, specific temperature control. We can't just move them." Martinez understood, suggesting a compromise. "We'll post an officer outside your home, 24/7, until the investigation concludes. The children should remain indoors, away from the backyard where the excavation will take place." As darkness fell on the Anderson home, media vans finally departing for the evening, the family gathered in the living room, trying to process the extraordinary events that had transformed their lives in less than 48 hours. The rescued kittens, the media attention, the police investigation, all stemming from Rusty's inexplicable behavior. Tyler sat beside his dog, arm around the golden retriever's shoulders. "How did you know, boy?" he whispered the question that had haunted them since that rainy Tuesday. "What did you sense that none of us could?" Rusty offered no explanation, just leaned into the boy's embrace, his eyes occasionally drifting toward the backyard where secrets still lay buried beneath innocent-seeming soil, the full truth of what he had detected with his extraordinary senses yet to be revealed. Monday morning brought an excavation team to the Anderson property. their arrival heralded by the rumble of equipment trucks and the clinical efficiency of crime scene technicians. The family watched from the kitchen window as their backyard transformed into something resembling archaeological dig-white tents erected over the areas of interest to shield the work from both weather and prying eyes. John had taken emergency leave from the bank, Emma continuing to work remotely between kitten feedings. Both parents struggling to maintain a sense of normalcy for Tyler and Lily, despite the extraordinary circumstances unfolding literally in their backyard. A soft knock at the front door announced Officer Martinez's arrival, her expression serious. But controlled as John invited her inside, she had been their primary contact throughout the investigation, her professionalism tempered with genuine concern for how the family was coping. "We have some developments," she began once seated at the dining room table, Emma joining them while the children remained in the laundry room with Rusty and the kittens. "First, I want to update you on the investigation into the buried kittens specifically." Emma leaned forward as someone come forward. Martinez nodded. "We've identified the individual responsible for burying the kittens. A 17-year-old male, Jeremy Carlson, lives 3 streets over. He confessed after his parents discovered social media posts where he was bragging about it to friends. Disgust flickered across John's features. Why would anyone do that, let alone brag about it? Martinez's expression remained neutral as she explained the teenager's disturbing motivation. Apparently, he found a pregnant stray had been feeding it when the mother cat disappeared after giving birth. He located the kittens in an abandoned garden shed on vacant property at the end of your block and decided to bury them alive. Emma finished, her voice tight with controlled anger, according to his statement. Martinez continued, he considered drowning them, but thought burying them would be less direct. He's exhibiting concerning lack of empathy. The district attorney is pursuing animal cruelty charges despite his age, due to the premeditated nature and his apparent pride in the act. John shook his head, struggling to comprehend such callousness. And he chose our yard specifically. Martinez nodded. He indicated your property was selected because it was easily accessible. The oak tree provided cover from street view, and the ground was softer there, easier to dig without much effort. Randomness of it sent a chill through Emma. Their yard chosen not from malice toward them personally, but from simple convenience. Their family unknowingly living alongside, buried, suffering because a disturbed teenager had decided their property was a convenient disposal site. Is he connected to the Carsons? John asked, connecting the dots to the previous homeowners. Martinez shook her head. That's where our investigation takes a different turn. The Carsons have no connection to Jeremy Carlson, but we have located them, or rather, their remains. The blunt statement hung in the air between them. Emma's hand moving to cover her mouth in shock. John's posture stiffening as the implications registered. The cadaver dogs alerted correctly. Martinez explained, speaking with careful precision. Thomas and Elaine Carson are buried on your property in 2 separate locations near the garden shed and behind the compost bin. Based on preliminary examination, they've been there approximately 7 months since before you purchased the home. John struggled to process this information. We've been living here, gardening, playing with our kids, and all this time. Martinez nodded sympathetically, understanding the violation they must feel. I know this is disturbing. We believe they were murdered shortly before the house was sold. Their identities used to process the sale, but they never actually left the property. Emma found her voice asking, the question foremost in her mind, do you know who killed them? Martinez hesitated, weighing how much to share before continuing. We're pursuing their son, Daniel Carson, as a person of interest. He was living with them at the time. Neighbors reported frequent arguments. He has a history of violent behavior and drug offenses and disappeared around the same time the house was sold. The realization that they had been living in a house where a double murder had occurred, the victims buried in the yard where their children played, sent waves of horror through John and Emma. The random burial of kittens now overshadowed by a much darker crime. But how did the house get sold? Emma asked if they were already dead. Martinez explained the complex fraud that had unfolded. Daniel Carson apparently used his parents' identities, forged signatures on documents, worked with a moving company to clear out enough of the house to make it appear his parents had relocated urgently, even created digital footprints of them supposedly living in another state. It was sophisticated. Martinez acknowledged much of the paperwork appeared legitimate enough that the real estate company didn't question it. The Carsons' bank accounts continued to show activity. Their bills were paid, all creating the illusion they were still alive, just relocated. Why sell the house? John asked if he murdered them. Why not just stay there? Financial gain. Martinez replied, the house was fully paid off. Daniel Carson collected approximately $300,000 from the sale, then disappeared, possibly overseas. We're working with federal authorities to track his movements. The conversation paused as Tyler appeared in the doorway. Mom, he called excitedly. Miracles. Eyes are starting to open. Emma forced a smile despite the horror still reverberating through her. That's wonderful, sweetheart. I'll be there in a minute, after Tyler returned to the laundry room. Martinez continued in a lower voice. We'll need to process the entire property over the next several days. It's now a homicide investigation. We can arrange temporary housing for your family. John considered this, weighing the trauma of staying against the disruption of leaving, especially with the kittens, still needing specialized care. How long will the investigation take? Martinez was honest, at least a week. Possibly longer for the forensic work, but the excavation of the remains should be complete by tomorrow. Emma made the decision, speaking with the clarity that came from prioritizing her children's well-being. We'll stay at my sister's once the bodies are removed. She lives 30 minutes away, but we can come back for regular kitten care. We need to get the children away from this. Martinez nodded understanding. Can we arrange protective custody for Rusty during this time? She asked. We've had media requesting interviews with the dog who discovered the kittens. His story has gone national. John looked toward the laundry room where Rusty remained with the children and kittens. He stays with us, he's family. The officer didn't argue, recognizing the bond between the family and their pet, instead providing information about counseling, resources for the children, and recommendations for handling media attention that would inevitably intensify once news of the homicide investigation broke. After Martinez left, John and Emma joined their children in the laundry room, seeking comfort in the innocence of new life. The 5 kittens now, active and vocal, Miracle's eyes indeed beginning to open, tiny slits of blue appearing in the delicate face. Rusty remained attentive to his charges, but his vigilance had softened the threats he had sensed, now being addressed by human authorities. That evening, as the excavation teams departed, promising to return at dawn, Emma found Tyler sitting with Rusty on the front porch, both watching the police activity with solemn attention. Do you think Rusty knew about the buried people too? Tyler asked, his perception cutting to the heart of what the adults had tried to shield him from. Emma sat beside her son, choosing honesty over protection. I don't know. Sweetheart, dogs have senses. We don't understand. Maybe he sensed something was wrong with our yard from the beginning. Tyler nodded thoughtfully. Considering this, he only started digging when he heard the kittens cry, he said. But he always acted different in certain parts of the yard, like he was avoiding them. Emma realized Tyler was right, recalling how Rusty had always skirted the areas near the shed and compost bin when playing fetch, never lingering where the cadaver dogs had later alerted his instincts, perhaps warning him of death's presence, even when the humans remained oblivious. What happens now? Mom Tyler asked the question, encompassing more than he could articulate. We'll stay with Aunt Claire for a while, Emma explained while the police finished their work. But we'll come back every day to take care of the kittens, and then what? Tyler pressed. Will our house still be our home? Emma pulled her son close, understanding the deeper question. How could their family home ever feel safe again after what had been discovered? How could they reclaim the innocence of the space now tainted by knowledge of what had happened there before they arrived? Home is where we're together, she said. Finally, where we take care of each other, that doesn't change because of what happened here before we came, as darkness fell over the neighborhood. The Anderson house stood silent but watchful. Police tape cordoning off the backyard, the family inside preparing for temporary evacuation. Rusty moving between the kittens and the windows. His mission of rescue transformed, but not completed the secrets. He had helped unearth, still unfolding their full and terrible truth. 2 weeks passed in a blur of temporary displacement and gradual adjustment, the Andersons settling into the cramped but welcoming space of Emma's sister Claire's home, while continuing to make daily trips back to their house to care for the kittens. The police investigation progressing with methodical thoroughness, the media attention fluctuating as the story evolved from heroic dog saves kittens to gruesome murder discovery. The kittens thrived despite the chaos surrounding their rescue all. 5 now with open eyes, their tiny bodies growing stronger daily, their personalities emerging distinct and individual miracle. The smallest still lagged behind in size, but showed a fighting spirit that impressed even Dr. Chen during her final professional visit. "I've rarely seen such resilience," she remarked, examining Miracle with gentle hands. "This one should have died multiple times over, but refused to give up. Just like your Rusty refused to stop digging. Rusty had adapted to their temporary living situation with surprising ease, seeming to understand the necessity of protecting both his human family and his adopted kitten, Charges, his vigilance extending to the new environment, checking doors and windows in Claire's home, just as he had in their own, his protective instinct transcending physical location. The most remarkable development had been his relationship with the kittens, particularly Miracle the golden retriever assuming a surrogate parent role, cleaning them with gentle licks, monitoring their movements as they became more mobile, even allowing them to climb on his massive form. Their tiny claws finding purchase in his golden fur as they practiced newly discovered motor skills. He thinks he's their dad, Tyler observed, watching. This unexpected bond developed more like their protector, Emma corrected, though she understood what Tyler meant. Rusty had saved these kittens from death, his connection to them, transcending normal canine behavior, especially toward Miracle the smallest. Kitten, who often slept curled against Rusty's warm side when not being fed or stimulated, Lily had formed her own special attachment to Miracle, the 7-year-old, spending hours watching the kitten's development, talking to it in soft tones, constructing elaborate stories about its future. "I'm going to teach Miracle to be a therapy cat," she announced one evening. "She can help people feel better in hospitals, just like how Rusty helped the kittens feel better." The innocent statement highlighted the deeper question the family had been avoiding: what would happen to the kittens once they were fully weaned and independent. Officer Martinez had mentioned that animal control would normally take them for adoption placement, but the exceptional circumstances of their rescue and the media attention had created other possibilities. "We've received over 200 adoption requests," Martinez informed them, during a case update call from people who followed the story, but there's also interest from animal behaviorists studying the unique bond between Rusty and the kittens, especially Miracle. The decision loomed larger as the kittens grew more active, transitioning from formula to soft food, their eyes fully open, their coordination improving daily. The temporary crisis that had united the family in common purpose evolving into a longer-term question of responsibility and attachment. Meanwhile, the homicide investigation reached significant milestones. Daniel Carson located in Brazil, authorities working on extradition, the evidence from the Anderson property providing crucial links to establish his guilt. The full story emerging through financial records and witness statements. A troubled son with addiction issues, a family inheritance at stake, a premeditated double murder disguised as a sudden relocation. The details filtered to the Andersons through official channels, Martinez keeping them informed as appropriate, the family processing the horror of what had happened in their home. Before they arrived, while simultaneously trying to plan their return, the crime scene finally released back to them after thorough processing. Can we even live there again? John questioned late one night after the children were asleep, the knowledge of what happened hanging between them. Emma understood his hesitation, their sanctuary violated not by their own experience, but by the knowledge of what had occurred there. "I don't know," she admitted, "but it's our home. We made it ours, the children's. Rooms, their school district, our neighbors." They drove to the house together the following day, while the children remained with Claire, Emma's sister. Having become attached to the kittens herself, offering assistance with their care whenever the Andersons needed time away, the house stood silent in the afternoon sunlight. The backyard restored after the investigative excavation. New sod covering the areas that had been disturbed inside felt both familiar and strange simultaneously. Their furniture, their photographs, their lives preserved as if waiting for their return. But the knowledge of what had happened, creating an invisible barrier to simply stepping back into normal Cyrusty, accompanied them moving through the house with purpose checking, each room as if conducting a security sweep, before settling in the laundry room where the kitten nursery remained intact. His behavior communicating what the humans struggled to articulate. This place, despite what had happened, remained their territory. Their home. We'll need to cleanse it. Somehow, Emma said, not just physically but spiritually. John nodded, understanding what she meant. Perhaps we start by replacing the darkness with something positive. The idea took shape between them, gradually transforming from vague concept to concrete plan. By the time they returned to Claire's house that evening, a decision forming not just about the house, but about the kittens who had catalyzed their extraordinary journey. The family gathered for a meeting. The children included their opinions valued as equal stakeholders in what would affect them all. John and Emma presenting the situation with age-appropriate honesty. "Our house has had some sad things happen in it," John began, "but we have a chance to fill it with new love and happiness." Emma continued, "We need to decide about the kittens. All 5 are healthy now and will soon be ready for permanent home." Lily's eyes immediately filled with tears. "I want to keep Miracle," she said, her attachment to the smallest kitten evident in every interaction. Tyler, more measured in his response, asked the practical question, "Can we have 6 pets, Rusty plus 5 cats?" "Is that too many?" John and Emma exchanged glances, having already discussed this privately. "We've thought about that," John said carefully, "and we believe keeping one would be reasonable. The others would go to carefully selected homes." Miracle, Lily said immediately, no hesitation in her choice. The kitten she had helped save through the most critical. Emma nodded. "We thought you might say that, and there's something else we want to suggest." Their plan unfolded in the family discussion, creating a pathway forward that honored both the trauma they had experienced and the remarkable rescue that had brought the kittens into their lives, a way to reclaim their home, while acknowledging what had happened there. 2 days later, they returned to their house as a family, Rusty leading the way, the kitten carrier, containing all 5 of the now active kittens held carefully by Tyler and Lily. Officer Martinez meeting them there along with representatives from the local animal rescue organization and a family counselor specializing in trauma recovery. The backyard ceremony was simple but meaningful. A small garden created where Rusty had dug so desperately to save the kittens, a stone marker placed reading lives saved here July 2023. The entire family participating in planting flowers around the perimeter. "We're reclaiming our space," Emma explained. To the children, not forgetting what happened, but choosing to focus on the miracle of life that Rusty discovered. Martinez watched with professional appreciation, this family's resilience touching her deeply despite her years of experience with crime, scenes and victims, her usual emotional distance compromised by witnessing their journey from crisis to recovery. The 4 kittens selected for adoption were introduced to their carefully screened new families one by one, each recipient chosen from The hundreds of applicants based on proximity commitment and willingness to remain connected to the Andersons, allowing the siblings to see each other occasionally as they grew. Miracle remained with the Andersons as decided Lily's special responsibility. With guidance from the rest of the family, the tiny kitten, now exploring the house with confidence, Rusty watching protectively as his smallest charge navigated this expanded territory, the bond between them undiminished by the other's departure that night. The family slept in their own home for the first time in weeks, Rusty making rounds between bedrooms before settling outside Lily's door. Miracle curled beside him. The house reclaimed not through forgetting, but through deliberate choice to create new memories to build upon the remarkable story of rescue that had transformed them all. Outside, a light rain began to fall, washing the newly planted garden, Rusty's ears perking momentarily at the sound before relaxing back into sleep, his mission complete, his family safe. The tiny life he had fought so desperately to save, now a permanent part of the home he had helped reclaim from darkness. 6 months passed, autumn yielding to winter, then gradually softening into spring. The Anderson family finding their rhythm again after the extraordinary events that had transformed their lives. The media attention eventually fading as newer stories captured public imagination, their neighborhood returning to quiet suburban normalcy. The most visible reminder of their experience was Miracle now, a healthy, albeit small cat with striking tortoiseshell markings and an unusually social personality. For a feline, her special bond with Rusty remaining intact. Despite her growth and independence, the two often found curled together in patches of sunlight throughout the house or playing gentle games of chase in the backyard. The garden where Rusty had made his desperate dig flourished with early spring flowers, the memorial stone weathering naturally into the landscape, becoming part of the property's story. Rather than a stark reminder of trauma, the family had chosen perennials that would return year after year, marking the spot where life had been saved. Through one dog's inexplicable determination, the kitten's siblings thrived in their adoptive homes, regular updates and occasional visits maintaining connections between the littermates. The network of families drawn together by the extraordinary circumstances of the rescue forming friendships that extended beyond their shared feline connection, each adopter having been carefully chosen for their commitment to the kitten's well-being and their willingness to honor the unique story of their survival. Daniel Carson's trial was proceeding through the justice system. His extradition from Brazil finally completed the evidence, overwhelming the Andersons, choosing minimal involvement. Beyond necessary testimony, John and Emma making the conscious decision to focus on healing rather than retribution, allowing the legal process to unfold without their emotional investment. One unseasonably warm Saturday in early April found the family hosting a small gathering in their backyard, the anniversary of Rusty's adoption from the shelter, a celebration of the golden retriever who had changed their lives in ways none could have imagined when they first brought him home. He seems happy, Tyler observed, watching Rusty play with Miracle in the grass. The cat darting around the dog in elaborate patterns of feline joy, Rusty responding with gentle playfulness, careful, despite his size, never to overwhelm his small companion. He is happy, Emma agreed. But I think he always understood more than we realized. The gathering included special guests Dr. Chen, who had helped save the kitten's, Officer Martinez, whose investigation had brought justice and closure, the neighbors who had provided support during their crisis, and the families who had adopted the other 4 kittens, each cat now distinctive in appearance, but sharing the resilient spirit that had helped them survive their ordeal. As adults conversed and children played the academic, guests added a unique dimension to the celebration. 2 animal behaviorists who had been studying Rusty since the discovery, Dr. Eleanor Richards and her colleague Dr. Marcus Wong, had been conducting non-invasive research, trying to understand the remarkable sensory capabilities the golden retriever had demonstrated. "We've been testing his olfactory sensitivity," Dr. Richards explained as the group gathered for lunch. "It's truly extraordinary. Even among dogs, Rusty's ability to detect and differentiate sense is in the highest percentile we've ever measured." Dr. Wong nodded agreement, adding what's particularly fascinating is his apparent ability to detect distress hormones at concentrations most trained detection dogs would miss. This might explain how he sensed the kittens through several feet of soil. The scientific explanation provided context, but couldn't fully capture the almost supernatural awareness Rusty had demonstrated. John thought watching the golden retriever, now calmly accepting attention from the children. His patient tolerance, another aspect of his remarkable character. There are things science can't fully explain. Dr. Richards acknowledged seeing John's expression. Sometimes we have to accept that animals perceive the world in ways we're only beginning to understand. The conversation shifted to the changes in the Andersons' lives. Since the dramatic events of the previous summer, John's promotion at the bank, Emma's decision to reduce her nursing hours to focus more on family, Tyler's growing interest in veterinary medicine, inspired by his experiences with Rusty and the kittens, Lily's newfound confidence stemming from her role in saving Miracle. The kitten reunion provided its own entertainment. The 5 litter mates, recognizing each other despite months apart, their interactions displaying the complex social dynamics of feline relationships. Miracle, clearly the smallest but somehow maintaining a leadership position among her siblings, her personality shaped by her unique upbringing among humans and a golden retriever protector. Evening approached the gathering. Winding down, Officer Martinez pulled John and Emma aside for a private conversation. "I thought you should know," she said. Daniel Carson accepted a plea deal yesterday, full confession in exchange for avoiding the death penalty. The news brought complex emotions resolution without the trauma of a lengthy trial closure for the Carson family, who could finally properly lay their loved ones to rest, distance from the darkness that had temporarily touched their lives. "You've created something beautiful here," Martinez observed, gesturing to the gathering, the garden, the home reclaimed from tragedy. Most families would have moved, sold the house, tried to escape the memories. "We considered it," John admitted. "But this is where Rusty found the kittens, where Miracle fought to survive. It felt wrong to abandon the place, where such remarkable things happened after the guests departed the family." Settled into their evening routine, Tyler completing homework at the kitchen table, Lily playing with Miracle in the living room, John and Emma preparing dinner together, the ordinary domestic scene precious in its normalcy. Hard-won after their extraordinary journey, Rusty made his usual rounds, checking doors and windows before settling in his favorite spot. With a contented sigh, his vigilance never entirely disappearing, but softening. As months passed without incident, his trust in the safety of their home gradually restored. "What do you think he actually sensed?" Tyler asked later that night. As the family relaxed together in the living room, the question that had lingered through all the scientific explanations and expert theories, Emma considered thoughtfully. "Maybe he heard what we couldn't hear, or smelled what we couldn't smell. But I think it was something more, something like empathy. He sensed suffering and couldn't ignore it." "That sounds right," John agreed, remembering Rusty's background. His own abandonment and rescue, perhaps because he knew what it meant to be left behind. He couldn't bear for it to happen to someone else. The explanation satisfied them, not scientific perhaps, but emotionally true to the golden retriever who had transformed their family, whose inexplicable determination had not only saved 5 tiny lives, but had ultimately brought healing and justice to their home. As bedtime approached, Lily performed her nightly ritual, gathering Miracle into her arms, whispering secrets to the tortoiseshell cat, before placing her in the special bed beside Rusty's larger one, though everyone knew the cat would eventually migrate to curl against the dog's warm side, their bond transcending ordinary pet relationships. The house Settled into nighttime silence, Rusty, making one final patrol before returning to his bed, Miracle already waiting, his large body curling protectively around the small cat who had once been the tiny kitten he had fought so desperately to save outside. Their window spring rain began to fall gentle and cleansing the garden, drinking deeply. The memorial stone glistening in the moonlight that occasionally broke through clouds. The property peaceful, now the secrets it had held brought to light, and resolved the darkness that had temporarily touched their lives, replaced by the extraordinary bond between a family, a golden retriever, and the small cat whose life he had saved against impossible odds. Tyler paused at his bedroom window, watching the rain, his thoughts on the mysterious connections between all living things, the extraordinary sensitivity that had allowed Rusty to detect suffering buried beyond human perception, the resilience that had kept 5 tiny kittens alive until help could reach them, the healing that had transformed tragedy into something meaningful. Animals understand things we don't, he thought as he climbed into bed, the simple truth more profound than all the scientific explanations they had heard. Perhaps that was the real miracle, not just the dramatic rescue, but the daily evidence of compassion and awareness that transcended species, the sixth sense that connected all creatures in ways humans were only beginning to understand. In the quiet house, Rusty slept peacefully, Miracle purring against his side, their breathing synchronized, their unlikely bond a daily reminder that sometimes the most extraordinary connections emerge from the darkest circumstances, that empathy and determination could literally unearth miracles from the depths of despair, that heroes sometimes came with 4 paws and a golden coat, guided by senses humans could barely comprehend.